Hey everybody, welcome to week 2 and episode 6 of reviewing every album recorded by a member of Alter Bridge. We're kicking things off today with Creed's 1999 record Human Clay. So without further ado, let's dive in. If you remember from last week's review of Creed's first album, I've never actually listened to this group prior to recording this series, so I'm going in with a relatively clean slate. The band's debut release, My Own Prison, was one of my least favorite records up till this point, and it left a pretty bad taste in my mouth. However, I put aside any preconceived notions of how this next record may sound and listen to it with an open mind. And I gotta say, Human Clay is a massive step up in quality. I won't lie, it has its fair share of problems, which we'll discuss more in a second, but overall, I had a significantly better time listening to this record. Human Clay is more melodic and approachable than its predecessor, and while I still disagreed with some of the topics presented, I found it easier to ignore that and just enjoy the songs for what they were. All three instrumentalists brought the heat for this album, and it's great to hear how much they've improved as a band in only 2 years. Admittedly, there weren't many instrumental parts that stood out as highly memorable though. Mark, Brian, and Scott Phillips all seem like support members, rather than true contributors to the songs. But part of that is maybe just due to the nature of post-grunge. There's a strong emphasis on the vocals to tell the story. Speaking of which, let's talk about Scott Stapp's performance. I won't lie to you, I was somewhat dreading this album after I reviewed My Own Prison because I just couldn't stand Scott's vocals, but he actually surprised me this record. Scott puts a lot less effort into over manipulating his voice, and it's so much more pleasant and tolerable. It's not a perfect fix though. He has some tendencies I dislike. For example, he occasionally uses a bright, really nasally tone that becomes grating, and he butchers the pronunciation of many and vowels, pronouncing them as a. What is he, Canadian? I can't think of a genuine reason why someone would intentionally do this, since it doesn't add anything to the music. It's just distracting and makes it harder to understand what he's saying, which is a shame because his lyrics are often considered one of Creed's biggest strengths. Pronunciation aside, when Scott relaxes and lets his voice flow naturally, he's got a really rich tone in that baritone range that sounds very nice. Most of the songs from the second half of Human Clay made considerable use of this approach, and those ended up being some of my favorite tracks. These songs, including With Arms Wide Open, Higher, and Inside Us All, are the songs I'd actively seek out in the future, along with Are You Ready and Faceless Man from the front half. Before we wrap up today though, I've got to bring up something that I mentioned in the last Creed review because it's once again an issue on this record. Every song is the same damn tempo. Again, 10 out of 11 songs hover around the 70 BPM mark, and the one song that's different is only 90 BPM, so it ends up feeling the same anyways. The tempo issue is a little more forgivable on this record since I found the songs to be more distinct, but still, we're nearly 24 songs deep into this band's catalog, and they're all the same tempo. I'm not asking for speed metal or punk rock, but mixing up the tempos goes a long way towards creating more variety in your work. Some people may not even notice or care about this, but it stood out immediately when I listened to this record. I am hoping and practically praying that their remaining 2 albums mix things up a bit, because if the rest of the songs are also 70 BPM, it's gonna be hard to take any of it seriously. Human Clay is a lot more enjoyable and approachable than its predecessor, and while Creed improved their songwriting in some areas with this record, other aspects of their composition still have some major flaws. I think I'll come back to this record in the future, but only to listen to specific songs rather than the whole album. For a final score, I'm giving Human Clay by Creed a 7.6 out of 10. Let me know your favorite songs from Human Clay down in the comments. Next up is Miles Kennedy's final record before joining Alter Bridge, so come back tomorrow for my review of Second Skin by the Mayfield 4. In the meantime, check out this playlist in case you've missed any of my other reviews in this series. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.